Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to Wasteland Talks, my weekly talk show where I talk about whatever the hell I want. And this week, I have my friend John from SiftPop joining me. And John, what are we going to be doing with this week's episode?
Top five spin-off shows.
So, we're going to be talking about some television and specifically shows that were spun off of something. So it could have been a film, could have been another TV show. So we're going to be taking a look at some of our favorites. And John, would you like to get started with your number five?
Number five, Angel,
Um,
spin-off of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I'm actually working my way through this on Disney Plus at the moment, and yeah, I think I'm only in the first season at the moment, but I'm watching it simultaneously with Buffy. I've actually looked up
nice.
online what order to watch the episodes in because there's no information on Disney Plus about what order these episodes were in. But I think I'm actually enjoying Angel a little bit more than Buffy at the moment. Because him as a main character actually I think is a lot more interesting. Get to see a bit more of what life as a vampire is like. The kind of the perks to it and the downside. Of course, with him being a vampire, of course, most of the adventures take place at night, so that makes it a bit more sort of visually interesting. And you kind of get sort of the idea of what it is like to sort of fight these bad guys actually as a vampire rather than being a more sort of traditional sort of figure like Buffy would be. Um, and I don't know what it is, but actually, I'm enjoying Cordelia a bit more in Angel. I found her pretty insufferable in Buffy, but she's actually pretty interesting more as a much more main character, I think. But yeah, only in the first season at the moment, but really enjoying it.
It's interesting because I've only sporadically watched Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I haven't watched like the show in like any amount of depth. And I don't think I've ever watched an episode of Angel, but I do know like there's a lot of people that are huge Buffy fans. And also like it's pretty popular. Like this was a pretty big deal, this spin-off coming off
Yeah.
of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And know a lot of people really enjoyed Angel a lot. And like I didn't even watch the shows and I knew they were a spin-off. It was a spin-off of Buffy. So like obviously was like out in pop culture and stuff like that and making a pretty big impact.
Oh yeah, yeah. When I first started watching Buffy, I was Angel shows up. I'm like, oh, it's this guy that's in that other show,
Yeah. It's
like what
like,
he's known for now.
well, there you go. So like that's where that came from.
Yeah.
My number five. So not gonna lie, the top ones were pretty like really safe. Like they're definitely ones that I absolutely love. I had to put some thought into some of these, and some of these are a little bit more recent. And my number five is Peacemaker. I had a lot of fun with John Cena as Peacemaker in the Suicide Squad. I'm like, oh, that's a fun, crazy, like side character. And then when I found out like James Gunn was going to make a spin-off TV show about this character, I'm like, why? I'm like, he's one of the least relatable characters in the Suicide Squad. And like also, he's an asshole. And like I think it was like the perfect role for John Cena to like jump in and have some fun with. And then I watched the show, which obviously the opening, like the intro credits and everything, that dance and that song was like burned in everybody's brains who were watching that week to week. And then I was surprised by the amount of depth that they like cranked out of this character who obviously had a lot of trauma, had a really effed up childhood, and put on this track to, fight a whole bunch of like giant alien bugs and stuff like that that were like taking over people. I'm just like, after you watching, you're like, this was such a James Gunn thing. Because like after watching Slither and Super and stuff like that, it's just like, yep, it's 100% feels like a James Gunn show. But I really enjoyed it, and it feels so weird to be like, I want more of Peacemaker. I'm assuming there's that possibility because James Gunn's running DC now creatively.
No,
So
it's true.
obviously it's one of his properties. So, but I had a lot of fun with it. I really enjoyed this show. And it was definitely very interesting being as like I had no interest in watching the show when I heard they announced it because I'm like, that sounds stupid. and then they did some interesting things with it. So
Yeah, not seen a single second of it. I'm gonna have to check out the intro at least.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
the
Did like
watching
him in
the
the Suicide Squad.
yeah
So yeah, I may
watching
have to
the
check it out.
watching the intro credits is at least the laugh that you're gonna get,
Oh, okay.
because the absurd dance that everybody does during it. John Cena's so serious. TikTok just blew up with that.
Oh
People
wow.
doing that
Okay.
dance for like months afterwards. And then like any TikTok trend, it ended and then just on to something else. But John, what's your number 4?
Torchwood. This was a spin-off of Doctor Who, the
Oh.
character of Jack Harness, who shows up in the first series of the revived series. Um, so yeah, the title is actually an anagram of Doctor Who, and it's like this just sort of side group of people that sort of fight bad guys in similar way to the Doctor. But basically, it was on after 9 o'clock, which in this country is like the time when you're supposed to be able to put TV programs on that are not so appropriate for kids. You
Mhm.
know, they got more violent and they got more sort of adult content and everything. So basically, it was just stories they wanted to do with Doctor Who, but couldn't because they weren't, family friendly. So it deals with I think there's one where there's a paedophile is the bad guy. There's another one where there's sort of like sexual relations with some of the monsters. And I think there's another one where I couldn't really pinpoint any like real adult content. It just had a really harrowing sort of subject matter of these people that had traveled forward in time from the 50s and could not get back. They were just stuck in this time period for eternity. And this guy like meets his son as like an old man, and it's just really quite harrowing. So I think that's maybe the reason they couldn't do it in Doctor Who. But yeah, the I'm not sure if it was the last season or maybe in the season before, they had like a 5-parter of 5 hour long episodes called what was it called? I'm forgetting the name, but the Children of Earth, I think it was called. Basically, this sort of omnipresent alien species just takes over all the children on Earth, and they just start talking to them. And it's really quite sort of creepy the way they just suddenly start talking to them. Yeah. So yeah, Torchwood, spin off of Doctor Who, and a much more scary show, I think, than Doctor Who ever was.
It's interesting because like my brother's a big fan of modern Doctor Who. Like he's watched a lot of Doctor Who from the most recent series and stuff like that. He's a huge David Tennant fan. So he's obviously watched all of that. I
So yeah,
watched
now it's coming
yeah,
back.
yeah. I heard that. I'm like, oh, my brother's gonna be really happy. I've sporadically watched a few of the episodes of like the newer series with my brother, but there was a point where I'm like, I'm gonna go back and watch all of Doctor Who because I have BritBox,
Oh
which
wow,
here and it's like it has all of like the
yeah,
original series that they could find. Because some of them, like, there's missing footage, there's stuff like that, and like I got through, and I was trying to binge it, and I got through like the first 7 or 8 series. I'm just like, I need a break, and then I never went back.
you do
And
not binge classic Doctor Who. I'm afraid it's just unwatchable like that.
I felt like very quickly, I'm just like, uh, this doesn't feel like something that I want to continue to just like try to burn through. I have thought about going back and watching some of like the modern series of Doctor Who because like obviously it's such a big impactful series, and Torchwood sounds like a really interesting spinoff because like it seems like the purpose of it is to be able to dive into some stories that you really couldn't do on like regular Doctor Who. And that seems like an interesting reason to do a spinoff and not just like, wow, money. Um, which I feel like most spinoffs come because of that.
Yeah.
So that's definitely something I'd be interested in checking out. My number 4, I felt like since I am a big fan of like the MCU, watch every Marvel project that comes out, and I'm like, I felt like I tried to find one of the shows to highlight here, and it was either going to be WandaVision or Loki because they're the only ones that like I feel like I thoroughly enjoyed all the way through, and I decided to go with WandaVision because like obviously this is a spinoff of the larger Marvel Cinematic Universe and introducing like Scarlet Witch and her finally getting like her own spotlight from popping up in Age of Ultron for the first time. And I remember like the idea of this seems so unique and interesting compared to like, you know, it's a Marvel movie. Hero has a villain. Things blow off in the third act. There might be a sky beam or something. And this is like each episode's going to be a different style of sitcom storytelling. And I'm like, this seems really interesting. And I did really enjoy the show. And like by the end, did it kind of to how every Marvel project does? Yeah, because there's magic fights and chucking magic balls at each other and stuff like that. But like I still thought it was a really interesting show, and there was definitely a lot more emotion in it than a lot of the other like Marvel properties. Like I actually felt really bad for Wanda, minus the fact that she enslaved a whole entire small town, and then and it's just like, oh well, that happened though. So thinking about that, but I really enjoyed WandaVision a lot.
Well, I may as well tell you my number 3 now because that is also WandaVision.
There you go. Perfect segue.
Yeah, can just immediately transition into you talking about. Yeah, really creative sort of idea of just making a sitcom like for every episode and just it being like the style of whichever decade it was. And it really a lot of fun, like being able to sort of pinpoint what the references were and what it was actually kind of spoofing a lot of the time.
Yeah.
I actually wasn't that familiar with a lot of them. Like I knew the sort of Bewitched intro, but I couldn't really sort of see the similarities in terms of the actual episode they had there. And the 2000s one actually, watching that intro and seeing like the sort of things they were doing with like the interviews or something, I was like, is this The Office or is this something similar to The Office? That was the one that really had me stumped.
Well, because there's so many shows that end up doing that. I felt like because of the context of it being in a home, it was like more Modern Family.
Yeah,
Like
I thought
that show, I felt like that was probably the one. But The Office was probably the sitcom that really started that. And then there's so many shows that were like, Parks and Rec was just trying to be the next Office. And then when it stopped trying to be the next Office, it actually started getting better. And so yeah, it was an interesting thing being able to like take a step back and be like, this is interesting. Seeing how they incorporate all these different sitcoms and stuff like that.
Yeah. The only negative I would say about it would be the final episode. I think it was kind of cliched.
They could have avoided just leaning into everything that they do in the third act of a Marvel project, but you know what? Just had to.
Yeah.
Just had to go big special effects stuff.
Yeah.
For the sake of it, which it felt needless, to be honest. At that point, I'm like, they could have resolved this in a way that we didn't need giant like battle in this small New Jersey town.
Giant battle in the air as well, with like the smoke in the background as well. Like, how cliched can you get, guys?
But yeah, and what I appreciated in like, not to like pull too many of the like details of the show, but like the reason that it was all set up in sitcoms had like emotional weight to it. And I'm just like, oh, there's a reason that this is going on. And I appreciated that. And it was still till this day one of the most creative things that they've done in the Marvel Cinematic Universe until it wasn't as creative at the end. So
yeah. Oh, and also got to mention a great line from Vision. What is grief but love persevering? I love that line.
I love Vision in general. Like how they've utilized him physically in the MCU has been. I don't think they really knew what the hell to do with him, to be perfectly honest. But like, I really liked how they like Paul Bettany was great and Elizabeth Olsen was great in this. I did really get frustrated when what the hell's his name? Evan Peters. It all turned out to be a penis joke. Like he turned out to be like who he actually turned out to be and not actually be Quicksilver, and then his name turned out to be a wiener joke.
Oh yeah.
I'm just like, wow, did a 5-year-old write this? Congratulations. But anyway, Oh god, now I'm gonna get one particular song from WandaVision stuck in my head again. Thank you, Catherine Hahn. My number three is Frasier, which was like one of the like real like sitcom spin-off kinds of things from like the 80s and the 90s, which I thought that was so interesting. It's like there's so many characters on the show Cheers, and one of them's gonna get a spin-off. It's Kelsey Grammer, the uptight intellectual guy that shows up at the bar. And then the show has a very different tone than Cheers, but like I watched like this whole entire series with my mom, and I was just a big fan of it. And I think Kelsey Grammer, it's definitely some of his best work. Definitely hasn't been doing a lot of interesting things lately. And which is why they're probably bringing Frasier back.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I am sad that like John Mahoney, who played the dad, has passed away. So it'll be interesting how they deal with that. And but like I like that. I love the dynamic between these like highly intellectual sons and they're like salt of the earth, just like blue collar dad. And it's just like the conflict that goes between them and stuff like that. He's like, he's just a retired cop. He wants to watch Seahawks games and stuff like that. And Kelsey Grammer is sitting there on his radio show telling people how to giving people advice about stuff. And it's very like you don't get a whole lot of like sitcoms that have like a more intellectual kind of feel to them because what are most sitcoms? It's like a family dynamic, and a lot of the time the main character is a dumbass. Uh, especially in like the 90s. It's like husband needs to be dumb, wife needs to be smart and way out of his league, and we don't know why they're together. But like Frasier was such a different, like fresh take on sitcoms at the time.
Yeah. My dad absolutely loves this show. He wasn't a huge fan of Cheers, but I think he has literally seen all of Frasier. It's like you bring up like any moment from Frasier, or any like particular scene, and he just starts reminiscing. Oh yeah, Niles does this, and then Frasier says this. It's like I was like, oh, you remember it, do you, Dad? It's funny how a lot of people do not realize this is actually a spin-off from Cheers. You know, I think it has like surpassed Cheers in terms of its popularity and its success and everything.
And I think it stands so well on its own, and that it was just like a side character. And like I feel like if you think of Cheers, you're not gonna think of Frasier.
Certainly not.
No, so like I think that's why it kind of like sticks out on its own.
Yeah. There was something else I was going to say, and I've forgotten now. Oh, Merris. I love the fact that there is never a scene where Merris is even supposed to be present. Not only do you never see her, but she's never even supposed to be there. And yet we understand her so well by the end of the series. She's such a great sort of fleshed out character who is never there.
That's an impressive lift when you have such a fully realized character that's just not physically actually there or anything. So there you go. Don, what's your number two?
Like you, I had a bit of a hard time with a few of these, but the top two here, I absolutely was certain about straight away. So number two is Better Call Saul. Yeah, I've been turning over in my mind ever since the series ended whether or not I actually think this is better than Breaking Bad, and I've decided that I don't think it is quite, because it's not quite as sort of gripping right up until the end. But yeah, just fleshing out Mike's character a lot more and really emphasizing just how strong a character that guy is. That he was just so competent in what he did for Saul throughout that whole series. Like Mike's the guy you really want on your side.
Mm-hmm.
Kim, I want a series about Kim now. She's a phenomenal character, but I forget the actress's name, but her performance, yeah. Thank you. But her performance, I don't know if she's won an Emmy, but she absolutely should.
This show hasn't won a single Emmy.
Wow, I did not know that.
It's BS.
Yeah.
It has one chance left.
But yeah, who would have thought that a show just about lawyers having like legal negotiations would be so compelling? It's absolutely incredible. I mean, obviously the ingenious Breaking Bad style writing, the way that everything unfolds is just incredible. The only like slight negative I would say is I think it petered out a little bit towards the end. You know, I wasn't a huge fan of like anything in black and white in the final season. I wasn't massively interested in the stuff that took place after Breaking Bad. I mean, it was cool to see Walt and Jesse again, but certainly most of the black and white stuff in the final episode is like, I could have guessed that this was going to happen, really. But yeah, incredible show. I must rewatch it at some point, really, because I have not watched it all the way through again since it finished. But yeah, just an amazing show. Just every single episode. This is another one I watched with my dad, actually, and he loved it quite a lot as well. And he was a little bit disappointed by the finale as well, but yeah, incredible show that, like Frasier, may have surpassed the show it is actually a spin-off of.
Well, and I think it'll be interesting what time will tell between the two of them. And I think why it's so interesting is because it is so different. Even though there are a lot of like connective tissue in terms of characters and stuff like that, it's a very different show. And like Breaking Bad is 100% a descent. And the interesting thing is, it's like Jimmy's doing not great things like the entire time.
Poor Howard. I feel so bad for him.
Oh my God. I didn't think I could feel bad for him, to be perfectly honest, like that bad for him. But like where things wind up going, I'm like, oh my God. And that last season did so many interesting things with some of its characters and had some really tragic, like rip the carpet from under you moments. Yeah. And it's so interesting. It was a very bold choice what they did with the second half of the last season, because it definitely didn't go how you probably expect it to go, because they started like sealing up plot threads pretty like mid-season, and you're just like,
yeah,
but then what's the rest of this going to be? And like, obviously it's a bold choice like that. It might not work for everybody. I really appreciated what they did with that. And what makes this stand out separate from Breaking Bad so much to me is it is a different kind of journey, where it's like Walt has no redemption at all. He is like, he broke bad. Jimmy's such an interesting character, and him trying to like, by the end of like, is he gonna let go of Saul and just let that go from his life? Because it's like his whole entire relationship with Kim was so compelling, and Ray Seahorn and Bob Odenkirk killed it. Like that show, they were absolutely fantastic. I know I've heard some criticisms that it kind of dipped in quality after what happened with his brother, because that was such an important point of the show, was his dynamic. And Michael McKean, so great. But like, I personally didn't think that it dipped once he was out of the show.
Yeah.
I thought that they went into some very interesting places, and this is definitely one of those shows where it's like you could pick certain episodes that arguably are some of the greatest episodes of television.
Yeah, and I was kind of ready to see the back of Chuck when he did go. Actually, I actually thought it got a little bit better myself.
Well, I thought the way that story went with him and Chuck played out and got to the point where like it needed to, and I don't think Jimmy's story would have went where it needed to if Chuck was still like a fixture in his life. So like sometimes we just have to sacrifice for the show to go where it needs to go. But especially what you said about Mike. Mike is such a great character, and I'm so glad that Jonathan Banks got to like dig into that more into this show. But yeah, I love Better Call Saul. My number 2 is Ash versus Evil Dead. I am a big fan of the Evil Dead 2, and Army of Darkness. And when I found out they were making a TV show with Bruce Campbell coming back with Sam Raimi involved, I'm like, I gotta watch the show. And it is bonkers. It is as silly and campy and creepy as it should be. Like I definitely think it's a little bit more Evil Dead 2 than Army of Darkness, because, like, to be frank, Army of Darkness just turns into a straight up ridiculous over the top fantasy comedy with
Yeah, I
like
liked it.
no, like I love Army of Darkness. It's just a completely different tone to things. Like
Yeah,
I
I get
still feel like Ash versus Evil Dead has actual horror in it. Army of Darkness really doesn't have a whole lot of actual horror in it. There's like a moment or two. But like I just loved what how they expanded the story, because like, the original Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2, it's like it's a very claustrophobic focused thing. And what they went with it, Lucy Lawless was a fun addition to it. And I just love Bruce Campbell. And he's so much fun in the show. And seeing Ash as a middle-aged dude dealing with all this crap is hilarious. And I I hate them for giving me the last 5 minutes of the finale, because it made me want that show so bad, and I know I'm never gonna get it. Like the last 5 minutes of that show, they knew it was ending, and you would expect, they would have closure. No, they're like, we're gonna tease you with something that you're never gonna get, and
Oh,
I'm like, how dare you? It's like it basically teased you with Mad Max Evil Dead. And
oh,
I'm like, how could you do this to me? And I'm just sitting there like, wow, I'm never gonna get this. It makes me so mad. But touche to them for like going there with the very end of the show. It was never watched enough. I think it being on a premium channel like Stars was never gonna help it. And but at least I got 3 seasons of it, so I'm happy.
Mad Max Evil Dead sounds like it would have quite the budget. So
Yes.
maybe that's why they didn't do it.
Well, I think they knew there was not gonna be a fourth season, so they're like, what would be the craziest thing we can tease to people? And just like,
Okay.
and then they did, and then I'm like, how dare you?
Yeah, only saw the first episode myself. Just never went back to it. I don't know why. Just maybe just wasn't compelled enough to go back.
That's
But
fair.
yeah, I might need to give it another go at some point.
It's silly, it's creepy, it's very Bruce Campbell. And just like have a blast with it.
Yeah, okay. So my number one,
Mm-hmm.
Cobra Kai, spin-off of the Karate Kid movies. This is very much a personal choice for me because I honestly cannot describe how much I am a fan of this show. I am like super fanboy about this show. Like when the previous like 3 seasons have dropped on Netflix, like they drop at 8 o'clock in the morning over here. I was up on my PS5 hitting refresh right at 8 o'clock on the day that it dropped, and I binged the whole season like in a single day with all of each of the last 3 seasons. I cannot get enough of this show. I just love every single character.
Mm-hmm.
I'm amazed actually the actors that they have brought back from the Karate Kid movies, how good they still are as actors.
Right.
It's incredible, and they brought back everybody from the movies that basically is still acting, and it's all the same actors from the movies.
I
It's
am gonna
incredible.
lose it if Hilary Swank shows up in this last season.
Yeah. Well, that's it. The last season is coming either the end of this year or maybe next year. Writer's strike complications, I suppose, with
Yeah.
that. But yeah, also the new characters that they introduce. Tori has got to be like one of my favorite teen characters, I think,
Yep.
of all time. Honestly, I just love everything about that character. Miguel is also fantastic. Again, really incredible actor that they get to play him, and the arcs that he goes over. And I want more Hawk. Hawk has a really really interesting sort of arcs
What
from like
a
um,
side character to
yeah.
just I was literally about to say soar in the spotlight. I'm just like, God damn it. Puns. But like this show has no business being as like addictive as it is. And it's
Yeah.
just so fantastic. And now I'm an idiot because I'm like, screw you, Peacemaker. This one completely just did not pop up in my head when I was making this
Oh,
list.
no.
I'm like, Peacemaker would have got like axed real quick because Cobra Kai is amazing.
Yeah, it is.
Oh my god. Just I just love like the meta jokes of like, why is everybody so obsessed about karate in this valley?
I didn't even think of that as a meta joke. Yeah, that's a good point.
Because the thing is like, this is not reality. This
No.
is like it feels like a fantasy because in what world would this whole entire town, the only way you deal with your problems is karate? And that's the only thing. And just like, quiet. And Johnny's just so great. And it's so interesting seeing Ralph Macchio come back to this. And like, they pushed it, like, maybe he's not like a real hero here. And I thought that was such an interesting idea of exploring that because the thing is, like, Larissa let it go to his head and he just has this vendetta. And one thing I'll say about this show, I love this show, but God, I'm kind of glad it's ending because I need some resolution. Because every season, it's like, are they going to make up and just like be a team? Because I feel like they hit a hard reset every single season of them, like, they're almost going to team up. And then they blow it up because they're a couple of man-childs and can't get past it.
Yeah, they can't stop fighting, can they? Johnny and
No,
Dan.
nobody can stop fighting in this show.
I love the fights that they've had, but yeah, honestly, they need to coexist together at some point.
Also, Terry Silver was such a great addition back into this universe. Like, he's like, the villains in this show are malicious. It's like people are gonna die in karate fights. For what reason? Fighting over karate dojos and stuff like that. Just like, this show's so over the top, and I love it. I love every second of it.
The fight scenes are just incredible. Like the high school fight scene, I think is probably my favorite. The fact that that's just one shot for a lot of it.
Oh my god, that was brutal.
Yeah.
That was so brutal. And they're like legit consequence. Like I was saying, there's crazy heavy consequences to so many of these things. Cobra Kai is great. And the fact that this started out as like a YouTube Red series here, and then Netflix bought it from YouTube and then was like, we're producing this now. And then it just progressively got bigger because it got that Netflix money.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, there is this weird theory among some of the fans that Netflix ruined the series. I'm like, what the hell does that even mean? Netflix aren't involved in the making of the show. They just give them their money. But, are you even saying that the series isn't as good now that it's on Netflix? You got to be kidding.
It just keeps getting bigger, better, and crazier. I'm like, I don't know what you want. This is exactly what I want.
Yeah, definitely. I think
yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, move on. Are we done?
Well, my number one's Better Call Saul. So we already talked about it. So, okay. Which, yeah, I love Better Call Saul. It's going to go down as like I legitimately think it's going to go down as like the most successful spin-off TV show ever. Because how could you capture the quality of something like Breaking Bad and then do it again and flesh out a sleazy strip mall lawyer and turn it into this miraculous epic show? So those are my last feelings, last thoughts on Better Call Saul. But there's a lot of great shows here. I'm like, your conversation makes me want to go and start watching some like modern Doctor Who and then some Torchwood. So there you go. That's the whole point of this, putting some spotlights on things. And I'm glad that you brought up Cobra Kai because now I regret not having that on my actual list.
Well, then our lists would have had 3 of the same shows on there, so it would have been kind of less interesting.
Exactly. This is why it's more fun that way. But John, thank you so much for coming on and talking some TV.
Yeah. Cheers. I enjoyed it.
And would you like to shamelessly plug anything where people can check out your work before we wrap up?
Probably Instagram. is the best place to find me. John Tillyard with 2 L's, 86, and that's the numbers 8 and 6 on Instagram. No spaces, all lowercase.
And thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.